Hello students, today we're going to talk about ratios. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers. So we could compare things like the number of boys to the number of girls in a classroom or in our whole school. We could compare one group of students, like the girls in the class, to the total number of students we have in the whole class. And these are some examples of types. These are the types of ratios that we can have. We can have a part to whole ratio, a whole to part ratio, part of one set to another part of that same set, or we can have part of one set to a part of another set. And you'll see some examples like that. So please, you can pause this and write this down. Keep this in your notes. Okay, now we're going to look at this example of shapes. And so if you notice here, we have one square, 5 triangles, and 5 circles. With these shapes, we can create lots of different ratios based on what we're looking at. The important thing with ratios to remember is that we have to keep the numbers in the same order that the words are in the problem. So if you look at this first example, find the ratio of squares to triangles. It's important that you write down that number for the squares first because the word comes first. So if you will write it right next to the word squares, that will help. The number of squares is 1 and the number of triangles will be 5. So if you'll notice, I wrote this ratio in 3 different ways. Same ratio, but it's either 1 over 5, 1 to 5 with the colon, the 2 dots in the middle, or in word form 1 to 5. And that's comparing the number of squares to the number of triangles in that set of shapes. If you'll notice, I also gave the ratio of triangles to circles. So there are 5 triangles and 5 circles. They're actually the same number. And we have the fraction 5 over 5, which we can simplify. So we can divide both of those by 5, and we simplify to 1 over 1. Now normally we would say that's 1 equal to 1 whole, but in this case we have to have a comparison of two numbers because that's what a ratio is. So we're going to write it as 1 to 1. And our last example for this set of shapes is the ratio of triangles to all shapes. So if you notice, we have 5 triangles and we have 11 total shapes. So we have triangles come first in the word form, triangles to all shapes. So that would be 5 to 11, and that cannot be simplified, so 5 to 11 would be the answer. Now I'm going to show you one more example with ratios. We're going to look at these dots. We have red and blue dots. And the first thing I would like you to find is the ratio of red to blue. So it's important that you put the number for red first. So there are 4 red dots. And blue, there are a total of 8 dots. So it would be 4 to 8, but guess what? We can simplify. So the 4 to 8, we're going to simplify that by dividing by 4, and we're going to get 1 to 2 ratio. That means there's 1 red dot for every 2 blue dots. And if I continue the pattern, I could multiply it by anything and get an equal ratio, just like that 4 to 8. But in simplest form, it's 1 to 2. Now if I want to find blue to red, same words, but they're in a different order, so my numbers are going to be in a different order. And if you notice here, that becomes 8 to 4, 8 over 4, but it simplifies, and again I divide by 4, and it simplifies to 2 to 1. So my final ratio in simplest form is 2 to 1. That means there's 2 blue for every 1 red. And we just want to keep in mind that we must keep it as 2 numbers. We can't simplify that 2 over 1 to just 2. We have to have 2 numbers to make it a ratio. So the final answer is 2 to 1. Please be sure you write all of these examples down in your notebook. I will be checking.